1966 can never be forgotten in the history of our dear country, Nigeria. That was the very day that we had the counter coup to that of January 1966. Unfortunately, the then first military head of state of Nigeria, Major General Johnson Aguiyi-Ironsi, was killed in Ibadan alongside his host, Adekunle Fajuyi. And so many sentiments were attached to this particular coup. And as a nation, have we healed from some of these sentiments which the coup of July 29, 1966 generated? That's a very big question. And those are part of the questions that our guests will be answering on the show this morning. We'll be looking at July 29th, 1966, military coup on the show this morning with Martin Morgan, PhD, international journalist. He's also a public and development analyst. It's a pleasure to have you.
Yes, nice meeting you guys.
Morning.
All right.
Yes.
Good morning.
Morning.
I feel the proper way to start is for you to take us down memory lane, especially for those who weren't born at that particular time. It's exactly 60 years now that we have had that coup. So what exactly was the situation on that particular day when that coup happened? And some of those sentiments of ethnicity that the coup generated, are we healed from it as a nation so far?
Well, I think, from various records, there have been a lot of records, a lot of perspective from this type of situation that happened. And, what happened was an uprising that came up as a result on 15 January 1966. Then that came up to be because our own republic, the republic then, as we were being known as at that period, was embedded with a lot of disrupted and some of the reasons we are still seeing them. So some group of young soldiers, majors as at them, most of them came out from the normal secular university and they were into the system led by Major Zogu and Coup, decided that yes, they need to have to change the polity. And they were the like of Ifejuna and Coup was there also because he's also an Olympian then, a Commonwealth medalist as at that period. Came in and said, okay, fine, they have to. That group, but ironically, it ended up to have a correlations of a particular ethnic dominance because of the originality of where they come from. So that, taking it forward, you now understand that actions were predominantly targeted to some people, and it was also alleged historically that some of the ethnic group protected theirs. And there was a lot of grievances in between. So that resulted into some of what we had in July, where Aguiyi-Ironsi was brought down with his host. Prior to that, there was also an allegation that there was this a sort of apprehension going within the military as at then that yes, some particular people are not very happy because of what transpired, because they felt that they were more victim of the situation. They were trying to call it revolution, but it was not really that revolution because it was one-sided.
Okay.
We had to call the story down. We know Aguiyi-Ironsi went down with his host in Ibadan. And unfortunately, that situations of that 1966 July is an historical moment for the democratic principles that we are all following from then up to this moment. We cannot talk about democracy in Nigeria without mentioning that area, because then it's not left for us to look at it in the broader perspectives on the issue for where are we taking the issue of ethnicity, legitimacy, federalism, controls, the subject of the armed forces and the paramilitary to be under the control and the super centralization of power.
Okay.
So those are some of these things we should now look at it going further.
Right.
As we are in our fourth republic.
Before you take it further and start breaking this down, if we also go back to the history you were trying to reenact a moment ago, we know that in 1966 there were actually two coups. There was one in January, which you've also mentioned here, led by the young officers in Nzogu and the rest of them. And then there was this July 29th, where, of course, the one we're talking about here, for a lot of people who, again, would want to distort facts. Can you please just, what was the major difference between the January coup, which of course was the first military coup, and then the second one, which many likened to be a reprisal, or perhaps, you know, in better words, like a vengeance on the first coup. So, right. So, if you'd like to just help us find the difference between the January and the July coup.
Basically, there's no major. The only difference was because of those characters involved in the execution of the first, and this one who was involved, and those characters involved in the second, and how the polity of the country changed from that situations that happened. So that is the only major difference. But that July one has a lot of impact to what we are seeing, because some of the grievances allegedly that came up from the First Republic that resulted to the 15th January are still very viable in what we are seeing today because of also the other influences. But don't forget, within that period, there were a lot of also influences. We are in the period of the Cold War. And Nigeria just came up from a colonial system. So there was a lot of influences coming out from left and right. So going back down to Ibadan, the 1960s, this is what the turning point of what we are now preparing for our own democracy as we are having today. But in between the lines, we are still having some of the cleavages that resulted to the first abortion or the First Republic that came out to what we have. So therefore, what do we have to do? We are now have to now understand that this history we are talking about is about institution. The political solution cannot be solved by a military approach, because the military coming in, they become an arbiter and participant. And at the end of the day, what you intend to achieve with political situations is not there, because you know that some of the institutions will be suspended, they will start running by decrees, and it's not helping if you are only in a democratic practice. So you can see that taking it down our own situation today, we should be able to have an institutions that are stronger, but we are yet to have that institution.
Okay, so how much of damage are we experiencing in terms of our national unity as a result of this particular incident of 1966? And what were the resentment against Aguiyi then that actually led to that coup?
You know, there was this Westminster approach that was introduced then that most of the people were not too comfortable in that, and they have their own understanding of why they should not accept on what he's saying now. So, but when Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon came into the saddle, he had to change into federalism, having the state. So that tells you a departure from what we were not happy about to what, and up to today, that is why you have a very high concentration of power at the center. And that is why transiting it down to our own political system, in between the lines, we have one of the major backstory in the Nigerian history, 1967 to 70.
The Civil War.
Yes, who resulted to Civil War. We don't need to go and remember some of the issue, because there's very sensible. Some people can say that it's a pogrom that resulted to some of these things. And as a result, people say, no, let us go on our own. So that is sentiment trickle down, because we are not seeing things. We are not seeing Nigeria in terms of sovereignty and legitimacy. People were now seeing every situation based on ethnic coloration. And that ethnic coloration and that malaise is still what we are still having up to date. And so that is why we keep on saying political solutions should be resolved by political approach and consultation. But however, in between the line, the duration that we have with the military system have been able to militarize some of the institutions we have, even in the civil sector, even the institution, even the political parties. We are not able to hold on, despite the fact that we had a break between 79 and 83, but it didn't stay long. So most of the crises and the reasons for why the January issue took place was the same reason that they gave in 1979, 83 crisis. And it keep on going from one group or generation to another. But the Fourth Republic, what are we going to learn about it? Is the credibility of our institution, credibility of our political parties. The political parties' democracy is what we need. Our institutions should not be personalized, because what the military and coup did with that fear, we discovered that we became so personalized. The institution became so personalized, concentrated at the center, so everybody wants to grab from that center. So that is why our election become like a war thing. It's supposed to be a discussion. Our institutions are not being developed to that point. We are now in the Fourth Republic. We are marching towards that. So the lessons for me, telling any other person, is that we should be able to institute the real democratic principles and ideals, even at the party level, and stop looking at all issues on the ethnic basis. Because this ethnicity that is causing the legitimacy of this country to be so fragile in terms of approaches.
I like the fact that you've brought us to this level. And again, sometimes we always tend to run away from issues when it has ethnic colorations, because we've also realized that as a country, this has continued to divide us further in all ramification. But since we're talking about history here and the role that ethnicity played, we cannot play out the fact that there were ethnic colorations in both coups, the January 15 and the July 29 coup. And so if we look at what led to those two issues, you've mentioned issues around bad governance. You've mentioned issues around bad leadership, and the fact that even though as military officers, they wanted the best for Nigeria, but we've also realized that no matter how much you want for Nigeria, there's always this personal interest hidden somewhere, somehow. But let's look at the lessons really that we must have learned from both coups that have led us to where we are today. And I know that issues around ethnicity will always come out. But how do we deal with this situation and deal with it in our own complexity as a Nigerian or as Nigerians? Because again, oftentimes we tend to just gloss over the issues and assume that we have just Yoruba, Hausa, and Igbo. Meanwhile, we are larger. We are larger than those three major.
In fact, those three major tribes are even the problem we have.
Because again, if you break those three down, it's further goes beyond what we can mention. So how do we close the gap?
We have to close
especially through the leaders, because again, oftentimes we realize that our leaders are even part of those who divide us further based on their own personal reasons. So how do we begin to close the gaps?
And that brings us to the issue of defining who is a leader and what is the concept of leadership as related to these ethnic groupings and the rest. Because this is where the followership too has a role to play.
Okay.
How do we close? Strong institutions means what? Strong institution means that even from, like me, I'm from a minority of Niger Delta and Cross River. So let me assume that even if I'm from a minority, I will know that, yes, I believe in the institution, maybe on the judiciary, on the separation of powers as proposed by Montesquieu, that, yes, there should be the rule of law as affected. It's not because I'm from a minority that my voice will not be heard. It's not because that the majority man will say, fine, this is what we want. No, there should be that consultations. And so once we have that consultation, we will not look at the military. Military is not, it's not their duty to be in power, I agree. In democratic principle, they should be subordinate or not subordinate, subjected to the authority of the civil government in place. So when some of these things comes up, it tells you that we are no longer solving our problem based on our own consultation. Why you in the minority, why are you angry? But the minority will say, no, let us trap on you. But that is why, like the question you are now asking, we have the Niger Delta agitation some years back. You know, they came out and the rest, they said they want the resource control. So this resource control is what is even causing a lot of crisis we have. So today, how do we map up? It's consultations. We talk to each other. Let me not look at a solution based on where I come from. Let me not look at a solution based on the interest that comes to my place. Rather, let us have a global perception about the national interest. The national interest should supersede our ethnic groupings. It's a very difficult discussion.
Absolutely, because
Very, very
I was just
difficult.
going to cut in, but I wanted you to land.
Yes.
The issue of national unity is very germane, like you've said, and of course, it's a whole meaning to different people. What national unity even means to different people. So again, would have to go back to leadership, followership.
Yes.
If we really do not understand as leaders what our followerships need or what the followership expects from leadership, how then do we begin to talk about national unity if we really do not even understand what the national
Unity is all about.
Exactly.
This is why, take instance for Nigeria, we have a national orientation agency. What are they doing? 774 local governments. This is where there's a default in that system. Why is it that in the national unity, for us to get to admission to school, because I'm from a particular area, I should score 59, the other man will score 150. So that equity, this is why the national orientation have to do some work based on what the leadership intends to do. But we are not being able to get that at that point, because rather we become so militarized, in quote, because of the effect of the legacy. We say, no, it must be done. No, this particular group can go fiasco. If you look at the internal democracy of the political parties, were they really internally democratic in their processes? They keep on fighting and going to court among themselves. No, normally that should have been a consultation among themselves. It shouldn't have been taken externally. So that issue of followership is depend. You still have to do that orientation. 60 years down the lane, you are yet to really understand that this is what a political party should cut across all ethnic, varieties and the rest. But we find a situation whereby we have political parties which are mostly ethnic based, who are not ideologically based. The same ideology for a majority should be the same ideology for the minority. If you have that as our national understanding, I don't think some of this crisis that we saw in 1966 will come back again. And it's never a solution. You keep on saying it.
Okay, so from your narration so far, it does appear that we can hardly heal from the wound that we sustained from that January and July coup of 1966. But then you talk about consultation, the need for people to come, talk, instead of going to war. Looking at our constitution, there are lapses that have been identified over the years. So are you prescribing that we might need to have a constitutional conference where all interest groups will need to sit together, identify the lapses in the constitution, and come up with a constitution that will take care of the needs of everyone for us to actually unite together as one indivisible entity?
Yeah, you see, you understand the society is evolving. Within the First Republic and now the Fourth Republic, there are a lot of values that have entered. The level of technology, the level of understanding, the populations, and what you tend to do are different as compared to what the model given to us. A lot of people have argued about this, our constitution given to us, amended, that we the people. Somebody was asking me, who are the we the people? So this is where we have to, but at the same time, we need also to understand that we have a national unity to protect. Once you protect a national unity, irrespective of the political party that is in power, let there be the understanding, yes, I am here following because I am to the extreme left or middle race or the other side. So if we're able to decentralize our thought, and that's why I keep on saying the political leaders or the political elite, not leader, the political elite have a lot of work to do. They are more concerned about elections. That is why the institution fragility also affected our thinking of what we are saying. So we cannot wait for so long. I don't always like this premise that, oh, our democracy is young, America. No, we can't compare America to us. We should have an adaptive system that have our own values. And once we have our own values, we now say, fine, this is what the code of rules we want to now take this time around. And we now look at that reform. What happened to the constitutional conference that was held in this country? There was there was some resolutions made. Where are that resolutions not coming up for us to understand that we need a stronger institutions. Once the institutions are stronger, we don't need to come and say, I need to talk to you first before you accept my value. No, most value and opinion and intent will be based on the merit of what it is. So once that focus is there, we say, okay, fine, we are like a team of football, our focus is to score the goal and will not be scored. That is what we need. So the leadership, in quote, needs to do a lot of work. And the followership too have a negative impact on this one, because most of them are just waiting. Oh, it's my brother, I'm from the same church with him. Oh, we went to this. No, even though he's doing the negative, whatever he says should be. No, it shouldn't be. So this is why the followership do have a role to play. You should not just accept this corn and hen approaches because it's your own relations or it's your own ethnic group. If you're able to do that, we will now say, okay, fine, this constitution, this is what we want. And the earlier we do that, the better for us.
Oh, okay. I know that the leaders cannot lead without the appropriate constitution.
Yes.
Earlier, you cited an example of someone scoring 59 in JAMB, and somebody is somewhere else scored about 250. The same admission that he or she was not able to get, someone that scored 50 was able to get it, giving room for inequality. And then you go to some establishment in this country, you see a particular section of the country there. I know what it took me to serve at the Nigerian Port Authority. I was the only person from my region that was there, and I was even told that you cannot serve here. It is the exclusive of a particular region.
That is the effect. These are some of this legacy inherited that did not help us in that, which we need to change the narrative. And the only way to change the narrative is making our institutions stronger than the personality or groupings. Once those ones are stronger by having the same law, so applicable, not because you are from this area, you cannot serve in a national entity, in an institution like Nigerian Ports Authority that belongs to everybody in this country. So this is where we have to do. So if that should be, who set up that status quo? Who created it? So we need to break it with hammer. And breaking that hammer is by consultation. No, this is not fair. And we should be able to now remove this inducement of value, or what do I get at the end of this discussion from some of this negotiation. But then we should be able to now say, this is the focus where we want to go. You know, like those are some of the issues that led to that First Republic crisis. Okay. And they are still emanating, that we need to break it down. Mostly the political party has a role to play because they are the people relating. I keep on talking about National Orientation Agency because you will not feel their impact. That is their role. In the local government, have you heard any of them? You don't know. So you don't know what's supposed to be done. No, that when you have even the power to redress and say, no, why am I rejected? How am I being rejected on this institution that apply to, for all of us, a federal institution? Even if it's state, there are some cashmen.
Right.
Yeah. There are some cashmen we have to see, but then merit should be one of the bases for us to get anything we want to do in this country.
Right. This conversation is really about remembering that July 29, 1966 military coup. And at the beginning of the program, we established the facts that it's been 60 years since that coup, which a lot of people described as the bloodiest coup in Nigeria. And of course, for a 60-year grown man or woman, there should be lessons you've learned about life. There should be things you've seen about life that will propel you towards planning for years ahead. So as a country, what are some of the things that you think Nigeria should have learned from that military coup, especially from what actually led to it? And again, we cannot take away the July coup from the January coup, since we know that, it was more or less like a follow-up to the January coup.
Anger.
Yes, anger.
A
reprisal, yeah.
Yes.
But basically, it was again about bad governance. It was again about the kind of structure that existed in the country at that time. What are some of the things that we need to do as a country to ensure that democracy remains intact? We know that a couple of African countries, we've heard about military coup. Even in Nigeria, there was one that was not successful. in the life of this administration.
Allegedly said.
Well, allegedly said that.
But at the end, some people were arrested.
But,
Yeah, some
I mean,
people are facing
and then
trial,
some people are
actually.
facing trial at the moment. So if we look at it that way, then it probably has been proven that it actually happened. So how do we ensure that the country remains on a path of democratic rule? Because many have also alluded to the fact that democracy remains the best form of governance that you really can get. So how do we begin to ensure that we keep this democracy safe and intact in the midst of things that people might also want to term as bad governance?
Democracy remains the best form of governance in any society. What we have to learn here is that for us to have a credible elections, a credible political party affiliations that should be based on ideology, a credible umpire, a credible devolution of powers to a point that it should not be that, yes, it should be too much centralized, a credible situation whereby each part of this country should be able to fend or at least get some of the subsidy in benefit from whatever they are producing. So when those institutions are created like that, the personalization of institutions should be removed. Then the institution becomes where it becomes, yes, this is the law, this is what we want to do, this is what your state can produce. Bring it, we have that devolution, we now discuss. Because that is issues that all was centered on legitimacy, ethnicity. And this is what we want to remove. Since it's so difficult for us to say that we want to be separated from our ethnic groupings, but we still have to do a lot of orientation, advocacy, dissemination. That is why I keep on saying
the NOA has a role
they have a role to play. 774 local government will never have any impact. What has been their impact? Nigerians are not belligerent people. Nigerians are very enlightened and calm people in terms of when they get and believe that, yes, this thing is fair play. This is what we have. This is what we stand. So let us use this story of Coup 1960 and ensure that we will not have any of those things and this, making the civil authority above any other authority with fair play and accountability. Once there is accountability in the leadership, the followership becomes very interesting. They know that, yes, I don't need to come and lobby you and minimize the space of certain corruptions and the rest. So this is where we know that each political party coming in, we should be able to have, and I say that, yes, if I want to concentrate in agriculture, if I want to concentrate in other things, this is the motto of our own political party. So we start bringing that orientation from the grassroots. Before you stand for any election, you should have been able to pass through a sort of, how do I call it, formation within your party level to understand that you are fit to stand to represent the interests of this party. And we should not be changing the goalposts of electoral process in between. Like you can now see some people decamp to one party, but they have been elected from party A. What are the tenets of the constitutions as related? So when we obey that constitutionalism and allow it to roll the way it is, you see that every person will align instead of using force, but use consultations.
Okay, we cannot discuss this particular issue without mentioning the then head of state, first military head of state who was killed, Aguiyi Ironsi. Is it true that the unification of Decree 34 was part of his greatest undoing, and that actually triggered that particular coup of July 29, 1966?
Yes, many books, many reportages stated as does. But then the question is that when the reprisal came, what happened? That's the question you should have. When there was a reprisal, what happened? It went back to the federalism, the federal system, which one brought. So these are some of these impact of the Western influence that also affect us in our own thinking. Because we started from Westminster, we're now taking the American pattern and the rest. So that period, that Cold War, there's a lot of speculative influence in certain decisions. So we are not isolated. So when situation happens, we discover that there are maybe other extraneous reasons being embedded in certain decisions being taken.
Mr. Morgan, please let me quickly hold your thoughts on where you are at the moment. We need to take a commercial break. When we return, he will take it from where I've posed him now, and then follow-up questions will definitely be here. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
When malaria knocks you down, you can be sure parasites are having a party